Writers. Today I'm sitting down with Erica Green, who works in the publishing industry. She is an author herself, and she is also one of the co-founders of the Iceland Writers Retreat. This one is a goodie with so many insider tips and training specifically for the American market, which we know is the biggest market in the world. You do not want to miss this episode. Make friends with the like button and let's head into the studio. For people that don't know about the Iceland Retreat, what would you tell them? How would you explain what it is? Because it's pretty unique, I think.
The Iceland Writers Retreat is essentially a writers' conference. It's a time for writers to come together to do small group workshops on the craft of writing. The workshops are led by renowned writers from around the world. And in between the workshops, we offer the chance to introduce you to the rich literary traditions of Iceland and also to see a bit of the country. So we offer day tours that are led by local authors, and along the way, we do maybe you'll stop at this waterfall and then go have a talk by a local author or a reading by an author. We have pub nights and receptions, and you get to hear some Icelandic music. So not only is it a chance for people to come together and have community and work on their writing, but they also get to know about Iceland.
Come about? Like, how did it get started with you and Eliza?
Well, it depends on who's telling the story. We have
Well,
different
you are.
versions. They do converge at one point. But the way I remember it is I was living in Iceland. I was there for a couple of years. My husband's job transferred us over there. And I've been in writing and book publishing forever. And I won a grant to go to a writers' conference in America. And I went to San Francisco to this writers' conference, and I came back. And like the day after I came back, I bumped into Eliza at a reception. And the way I remember it is it was this Reykjavik International Film Festival where we were surrounded by the most creative, artistic people. So all these filmmakers from around the world, and everyone was in these really cool outfits and talking art. And Eliza was like, "Oh my gosh, how was your writers' conference?" And I said, "It was amazing. We had the best time." And I told her all about it. And then she said, "Gosh, there's nothing like that in Iceland. We should start one." And I went, "Sure, whatever. Great idea." I'll never underestimate the power of Eliza again. But Eliza and I are both really planners. We're both editors at heart, and we're project managers at heart. And so we were in touch, the next day or so. And she said, "Okay, let's make a plan and we'll go talk about the writers retreat." And I was like, "Yeah, great." So then this is where the stories definitely merge. Is we had wine. There were three of us who had been talking that night. We met at my house. It was stormy. And we said, "Okay, if we could plan a writers retreat, what would it be?" And we listed out every idea possible. And we had a lot of them. And then we went to planning. So we gave ourselves deadlines. One of us was in charge of the business plan. One of us is in charge of trying to secure a founding sponsor and getting those meetings, talking to everyone in Iceland who has something to do with publishing, editing, festivals. We wanted to make sure we had buy-in from all the right places so that we could get support to do what we wanted to do. And 18 months later, we launched our first event, and Iceland Air was our founding sponsor, and they're still with us today. And we put together a PowerPoint and a business plan and a budget and you name it, and we just went for it.
So you mentioned that you have been in editing. So do you want to talk us through that journey and what that looks like for you?
Sure, it's been a long time.
That's okay. That's okay.
I was an English major in college, and I have always loved books since I was a little kid. And I've always been a writer and in writing groups. And when I was finishing college, I said, "Okay, I want to be in book publishing," and I volunteered at the San Francisco Book Festival. I was an intern for them, and volunteered for the whole festival. And at the end, they said, "Oh, we have a publishing program, an internship program where we place you." And because I'd been so active in at the festival, I got my first choice, which was Chronicle Books. And I thought, kids' books, that sounds amazing. That sounds so cool because you get to work with art as much as you get to work with, words. And I was the intern at Chronicle Books. And by 5 years later, I was the editor. So
Wow.
it was great. It was a really awesome place, super creative people, wonderful, beautiful books. I worked with some incredible writers and illustrators, and I got to do it all. And it was one of those things where somebody left and they had to fill a hole, and somebody got sick, and so next thing you know, I was like doing it all. And we went from, I think we published something like 20 books a year when I got there, and now they do hundreds. I think it was more like 50 when I left. So that was Chronicle, and then other highlights of my career. I worked at Discovery, which is Discovery Communications. So that was Discovery Channel, TLC, Animal Planet. There were a whole bunch of networks. I ran their licensed publishing group, and that was for kids, and I say grown-ups because when you say adult publishing, people go, what?
I know, grown-ups, yeah.
Books for kids and books for grown-ups. And I made books about, all the different TV shows, but also inside travel guides that use the Discovery Channel logo on them, and Trading Spaces and Monster Garage and all kinds of things. I had my first New York Times bestseller. We sold 1 million copies of Trading Spaces behind the scenes.
I watched that show. I totally loved that show. That was a great show.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but I learned a lot about the business of publishing while I was there, which was great, and what licensing is and how it works, and spreadsheets and P&Ls and inventory and stuff that I hadn't done so much when I was at Chronicle, focusing on creating the story and the book so that it was a beautiful book and the artist and the illustrator were happy, and that. I also worked at National Geographic, which is in DC, which is where I'm based now. I was the editorial director for kids' books there. So that was primarily nonfiction, though we started a fiction imprint while I was there. We did 100 titles a year, everything from baby books all the way up to young adult. And then I had to move again. My husband's job again took us to another country, and so I had to leave National Geographic. And it turned out we were only gone for a year, which we lucked out because the pandemic was just about to hit. But when I returned to DC, because of another bunch of changes in the beautiful world of big media, two of my favorite people at National Geographic were also looking for something new to do. And I said, we should do something together, meaning like work on a book. But next thing you know, we started in a company. So I now work as a book packager, a book producer, which is a subset of book publishing, and the company is called WonderLab, and we primarily create nonfiction titles for kids, and it's all B2B. So we sell our own original ideas out to publishers, we pitch them, and then we own the copyright to those, but we also produce the book. So from idea to finished book. But we deliver printer-ready final files, and then the publisher prints, markets, and distributes. We also offer editorial services, so sometimes a publisher will come to us and say, hey, we have this huge series, can you develop it for us? And then we hire the whole team. And we deliver, again, the printer-ready final files. And then we do consulting, and we do audio, a little bit of audio work, and also some digital content as well. And of course now we're starting to do some adult books just because why not?
You mean grown-up books?
So, yeah, grown-up books. So primarily we're doing kids nonfiction, but we actually have quite a range. So, but it's really fun because you get to do publishing from soup to nuts. So, for example, a publisher said to us, we're doing this huge series of 100 titles. You do it. We don't have the capacity in-house to do it. And this is true across book publishing kind of everywhere. The in-house capacity is very limited because of budget cuts and mergers and whatnot. So we then do the contract. We hire the writer, the editor, the project manager, the photo editor, the illustrator, the indexer, the copy editor, the designer, the art director, the whole team. And there's usually a team of 10, and maybe there's educators or expert reviewers or sensitivity readers or somebody else who, I mean, there's the whole cast and crew, just like you put on a TV show. So we hire that, we run the whole team, and then we deliver the final files, and the publisher then takes it
That
to
is
market.
so interesting. We've sort of the what we're trying to do here on the publishing path is to kind of demystify the publishing industry, because as a writer, you think you get the book deal and then you get this like magic thing in your hand. But you just listed off like 10 jobs for one book. Like, and the writer's just one of
Oh
those
yeah.
10. And you mentioned that you learned a
But
lot
it
about the
starts with the
business.
writer.
It does. um, but you mentioned you started in sort of the art aspect with the kids' books, and then you moved to business of writing, and you learned a lot there. Can you kind of like maybe? I mean, I'm asking you to kind of give me the footnotes of a very long and successful career. So, but could you maybe like sort of maybe demystify that business element for us? Would you be able to give us a little bit of insight into that? What you learned?
Um, I mean, I'm an optimist at heart, and I do believe that if you have a good story, it will prevail and um, it will find ears and find eyes, and it will grow. But it is a hard business. There's so few books that really make it. There's so few that really sort of break out. It's so hard to get published. Even as WonderLab, we've been working in book publishing for 25 plus years, all of us, and I do it with some partners as well. And even with all that experience, we're like, this book is perfect for this publisher. We know exactly who to sell it to, and even that, it can sometimes take. Sometimes it doesn't go for whatever reason, and sometimes it will take 2 or 3 years to make a sale. I mean, it's really crazy. And then there's only a handful of titles for each publishing list that actually get the support of the publisher. The rest, it's up to the author to or the illustrator to promote the title and get it recognized. So and that is even shrinking more and more. So often now publishers are looking for somebody who has a platform, who already has an audience, who already has a following. Um, and so that, in the clutter of media that's out there, how are you seen? When I was at National Geographic, we were distributed by Penguin Random House, and so I would go up every season to the client summit where they would have these really incredible and very interesting talks about the future of publishing, the business of publishing, trends, and whatnot. And now I'm a member of ABPA, the American Book Producers Association, and they also try to do these talks once a year by, like, they have research groups who talk about, how books are selling, why books are selling, where they're being discovered, sort of the churn at booksellers. I mean, it's a fascinating industry. It's been quite a ride to see it grow and change over the years. Some painful things. There's so few publishers left. There used to be so many little publishers and mid-sized publishers, and now sort of they've all been eaten by the big publishers, and there's sort of 5 or 6 big publishers left in the States, and then it's so much harder for the smaller publishers to sort of find traction. But at the same time, we are seeing them find traction, and you'll see a smaller publisher really start to take off. And the same is true of bookstores. I was there to watch all the independents go down, and Barnes and Noble and Borders take over. Then Amazon took over, and now we're watching the Amazon bookstores disappear in cities and the rise of the indies again, which is super exciting because it's a much more personalized experience, and they can really help you find the book you want to find and promote the right things. And the other big thing that's really happened, I would say, in publishing is dealing with inventory. You know, publishers used to have to order 5 to 7 copies of a title just for it to make sense. Not publishers, booksellers. And now they can order 2 or 3 copies, and if they start to run low on inventory, get the next copies in just a few days, where it used to have to take 3 months or more to get the inventory replenished. So the bookseller doesn't have to hold, you know, millions of dollars worth of books on their floor just to run a business. I guess the other big trend in publishing right now that's really affecting the industry is the supply chain. And, you know, after the pandemic, so many boats were stuck and there was such a backlog. And we're starting to see things come back to life and be a little bit more normalized, but we're not quite there yet. There's still a backlog and paper shortages and, you know, just shortages across the board for manufacturing. So there's a lot of things that hit this industry and so many people involved, and it's been fun. It's been a fun ride to watch all the different pieces. Did that answer your
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it did. I mean, so many more questions. But like, it's just from a writer's perspective, trying to get published, you kind of, I mean, it's probably human. You think of life from my perspective. I've got this book. I've just spent hours, maybe even years, writing this book. I'm trying to get it published, and I maybe understand the industry enough to know that it might hit the slush pile and not even get read. And but you're not really thinking about the human being on the other side who doesn't just have to read your book, but also has like all these other things going on, like, you know, trying to get paper for the books they're trying to get published or whatever they're trying to do. Yeah. And you know, I was talking to some industry insiders here in Australia, and, you know, I don't know what it's like in the United States, and this is where I'm leading this question. So they said that, you know, when they were working in publishing houses, they would be reading the slush pile in their off hours. They weren't getting paid for it. And then also the fact that, you know, publishing houses, like, we're kind of a small industry in Australia, so they don't publish nearly the same amount, and it's very, very hard to get published. And then, you know, like, getting published in Australia isn't necessarily, very rarely does it mean your book's going anywhere else. You have to get a separate publishing deal for England, United States. Is this, like, what's the publishing industry like? How does it differ than what I've just described in America?
It's almost the same. I mean,
Yeah.
so the editors have so much on their plates right now. They're always, I just feel like the media industry, not to be a downer, but it's always so full of layoffs and consolidations. And, you know, as I was saying, one publisher buys another and then everyone merges and there's layoffs. So editors now are often responsible for a ton of books. I mean, if you're a children's book editor in particular, the volume, adult trade or grown-ups books too, of course. But with kids' books, you know, you might have 20 or 30 titles that you're editing in a year, and that's just not humanly possible. So you're always working in off hours. You've always going home with, it used to be a bag full of manuscripts. Now it's, you know, you can read them online and take them wherever you go. And, you know, I mean, when I was at Chronicle, my first job, we had a room full of the slush pile, and it was just like, whenever you'd get to it, you would just try to take out another big crate and work through it. And sometimes you'd bring in whoever you could. And sometimes you only read the first paragraph and that's all you got. And if you're not hooked by then, forget it. I mean, I'd like to say it was the first page or first 2 pages, but it really depends. And so, yeah, there's just, you have to depend on a lot of other people. And part of why, I think part of why book packaging or book producing, the industry that I'm in now, has taken off is because the editors can't do it. So they'll call us and say, hey, I need a book about an 8-year-old ballet today or whatever it is. Can you go figure out what that is and then make it for me? Because you can't do that anymore. Whereas there was once a time when an editor could be like, oh, what does our list need? Let me think about it. Who would I get to write that? How would that look? And there's so little time to do that now. It still happens, but just not at the volume that it used to, is my sense. And then, yes, sub rights and selling your book outside of here, it just depends on the publisher. But again, it depends on the topic. And often the majority of the books are only sold through the channels and the US, probably North America. And then if there's a great sub-rights person at the publisher who thinks that your book is really going to work in another market, then hopefully it goes to Bologna or Frankfurt, one of the big international book fairs where the sub-rights are sold, and it hits. But it's not happening to most of the lists. It's happening to only a select few of the authors for every list. And it's funny because a publisher could put a lot behind a book. Perhaps they pay a huge advance to somebody, and that's not the one that ends up hitting. It's somebody else. And then, they will have had a whole plan. The publisher will have had a whole plan to put big marketing and foreign sales behind a title. And ultimately, it's actually another title that ends up hitting for another reason. So it's no guarantee one way or the other, but
wow,
it's markets.
How can a writer how can a writer navigate that space? Like, what would be your advice from maybe submission to marketing, and filling the gaps where the editor is just overwhelmed and can't do it, or the publisher can't do it? What should a writer keep in mind maybe while they're going through this process?
I think the number one thing is you have to have a good story. You have to have a good product no matter what. And that is the number one thing. Of course, there are people who hit, but if you've got the good story, that's the first bit. And then the second thing is having a platform. I mean, and that can be so many things. It doesn't have to be that you have 40 million Instagram followers. It could be that you are really good at talking about hydrangeas and you have some online club that you're a part of that's all the hydrangea growers of the world or whatever. I mean, whatever that niche is, find it and live in it and know it, because that's your market. And so hopefully it's a topic that you care about, and hopefully there's a world to help you do that. And if it's fiction, that's okay too. I mean, have a way to get your word out. And be ready to hand sell. Go to the book fairs. Go to your local bookstore. You can, as an author, you can set up, by talking to the nice bookseller around the corner, an event, and you have to do the legwork and the publicity around that. I was working with somebody who didn't want to do that, and I thought, gosh, if this person, the publisher's not going to do it, and if they paid somebody even, which depends on where you are and all this, but it would go such a long way. So sometimes you just have to be creative. I mean, book talk, who knew TikTok's book talk arm would make such a dent in the industry, but it's really taken off. So make a funny TikTok. I mean, whatever it is, poignant TikTok. I mean, I don't know. It's always changing, but you have to find a way to get the word out as the author. And it doesn't matter if you're a best-selling author or even someone who's mid-list, as they say, or first time. It's not going to hurt you, and it's going to help you. And you can do it in a way that doesn't feel cheesy, that doesn't have to be sort of outside your comfort zone. There's so many ways to reach out to the local librarian, if that's who you feel comfortable talking to, or whoever it is, But you have to advocate for yourself.
Yeah, no, and circling back to the Iceland Writers Retreat, have you seen over the last 10 years participants in that either people that are working with you behind the scenes, the writers that come to do the talks, the Icelandic, writers that are hosting the events, or even the participants who come to work in the workshops. Have you seen them kind of adopt the strategy of being a part of this community and then turn that into, a platform? Have you seen anything like that happen?
Absolutely. One of the best parts of the retreat for me is watching authors shine. So somebody who's never had something published before come to Iceland, and next thing you know, they've got a book deal. Maybe it was in the works beforehand, and then that takes off. But as I was saying, one of the things is community and finding a platform, and the Iceland Writers Retreat in itself is a community. So what you do when you bring together 150 to 200 writers, they're all writing. They're all getting the word out and promoting in their own way. So you not only make friends, but you also make sort of work friends and a writing group friend who also have friends who can also help elevate and amplify whatever message it is and whatever you're trying to get out. And we stay in touch. I mean, it's been so great to stay in touch with people over the years. Some who return every year. There's a handful that do, which is really exciting. There was a woman who came last year who had come our first year and she hadn't been back since. And it was like, Liz, you're here. This is so great to see you again.
So over the years, you've edited tons of books. Do you see sort of repeat offenders, like the apostrophe or something? Do you see repeat things that maybe writers, before you submit, could you please check this thing, because this is something that everybody overlooks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think my first reaction to that was, well, in children's books, there's so many stories, and even in adult trade, that the stories have been told before, but not in the same way. It may be there's a happily ever after, an arc may be the same, but the way in which you tell it and the details that you bring to life, that is the distinguishing factor and how you make it relevant to today's audience. In terms of submissions, oh my goodness, please no typos. Put your apostrophe. Also, make sure you know who you're targeting. So I used to tell people when I was in-house at a publishing company, they'd say, well, should I submit to you? And I said, go to the bookstore. Go to a couple of bookstores. Look for the books that are most similar to your book, and in the way, the tone, the theme, the way they look, how you want it to be. That's where you want to publish. You want to publish someone that has the same sort of idea about what it should be, the same ethos, and then target those publishers. So if, for years we would say we don't have poetry classes or workshops at the Iceland Writers Retreat, and people would write saying, I can't wait to come because I'm a poet and I want to take poetry workshops. And we're like, sorry, that's a good way to not get the Iceland Writers Retreat alumni scholarship. That was an instant no pile, like you didn't have to read anymore. So know your audience, and that's the thing. So if the publisher doesn't do a certain genre, they're not acquiring middle grade or horror or whatever it is, the genre, don't submit to them. Like, it's a waste of everyone's time. So I think that's the thing. It's really, and you have to research. It's hard. I mean, now that I'm on the other side and I'm pitching publishers, it's so hard to figure out what every editor is really looking for. You find an article online and then you pitch them and they say, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm no longer doing chapter books now. I'm only doing something else. So even it's hard work, but you have to dig. You have to dig and do the research, and it pays off.
Yeah. So yeah, you're on the other side now doing pitching in public. Like, yeah, it's business to business, but yeah. Wow. And so is there a place to go to find this information that's accurate? Is there a good place? I mean, obviously the publisher's website, but any other sort of places that people might check out?
there are so many blogs about who editors are. I mean, I read Publishers Weekly all the time, and Publishers Lunch and Publishers Marketplace, which are all industry things. But if you start Googling whatever your genre is, you'll be surprised how many people write about, like, how do I pitch to this editor? And I think they're pretty accurate. I mean, there's not a lot of people who do all that research and are inaccurate. So between the publishers' websites and Literary Marketplace and Publishers Lunch, you can find a lot of this information. Yeah.
Do you think that I was talking to an industry insider, Kit, here recently, and she said that 5 years ago, she would say, you need an agent, go get an agent, and now she's like, she's not really saying that anymore because people were saying that so much that now the agent slush pile is that deep, and publishers in Australia have opened up like submission Fridays or submission Mondays. Different publishers have different ones here. What's it look like in the United States? Is it similar? Would you say it's the same?
I think in the United States you still need an agent. There are a handful of publishers who don't require that you submit through an agent, that they take unsolicited manuscripts. But it's, again, the volume is so great that if you have an agent that's a good agent that can break through the clutter and has a relationship with an editor, you're likely to get your manuscript seen 10 times faster, to be taken seriously. They'll probably read the whole thing as opposed to reading just the first paragraph. And then an agent is helpful when it comes to negotiating a contract and knowing what the industry standard is for all the different terms and subrights and audio and ebook and what you're going to get and not get, which publisher is going to require you to sign away your life and which one is going to say, no problem, you can still own the copyright or whatever. So agents are really still the way to go in the US, I would say. There's very few ways that I can think of an agent not being helpful. So I would.
No, yeah, and I go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing is finding groups. So especially if you publish in a genre like children's or horror or YA or romance or something, there's so many great organizations that have sort of conferences, and agents and editors will come to that, and those are amazing. Oh, wow. So like this SCBWI, which is the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, or the Romance Writers of America, if you belong to that group, you go to the conference and they take pitches and they have contests, and they're always finding new voices through that community. So there are some great ways to network. I think we should talk about the Iceland Writers Retreat Alumni Award.
Yes, we should talk about that. That is a good thing to talk about. Yes.
It's probably the best part of the Iceland Writers Retreat is the alumni scholarships that we give out. So every year we do the equivalent of Kickstarter with an Icelandic company. They're called Carolina Fund. And the money we raise is raised by alumni. That's why it's the Alumni Scholarship Award. And we try to raise enough so that we can offer these scholarships, and we offer full and partial, and it's based on need and merit. So you have to, as you probably remember, submit 2 writing samples and then answer a bunch of questions like why do you think you should come, and can you explain how why you need the scholarship, and that you need the funding, and then it's also read, the submissions are read by alumni as well, and then they're all sort of ranked and graded or whatever. There's a point system we have, and then there's a whole bunch that come to be the finalists, and then we narrow it down again, and then Eliza and I choose at the end. We just get these submissions from all over the world, and it's such a delight to have people come from Australia, South Africa, Nairobi. We've had people from all over the US and Canada, of course, people from big cities, people from little cities. We've had people who are elderly, people who are super young. I mean, it's just the only through line is that they're all incredible writers. And it is such a delight to be able to say, this is it. Come with us. Come to this event. We'll showcase what you've done. We'll introduce you to all these people. You can take these classes. You can meet this community, and you get a free trip to Iceland. And it's so fun. And this week alone, Peter from Kenya won he was one of our award winners, and he just won a big prize, a big writing prize. And it's so fun. Somebody else has won fellowships and gone to grad school. And I mean, it's so great to see these writers who are sort of often at the precipice of their career. They've been writing for a long time, but they haven't maybe gotten a ton of recognition, or they've published one novel and they've slowed a little or something. And to have them like continue to succeed and to thrive has just been so awesome to watch. And it's so fun, not just because it's something that is great for the writer, but it's great for the Iceland Writers Retreat. I mean, it really adds to the diversity of the program, to what we bring to the table, because it really is an international fair. I believe last year there were people from 28 different countries. So
Wow.
while the event is in English, we have people from all over who write in English, and it's so wonderful. And we make sure that our faculty really are diverse as well. We put a lot of time and effort into making sure we've got a good balance of fiction, nonfiction, men, women, people who are, trans or LGBTQ, people who are of all different races and backgrounds. And we really want to make sure our faculty is representative as well. And that's important to us too. So it's important that the participants are as well. And it's so fun to watch people just soar in their writing careers. And this is a great place to both do that, but also find community and to stay together.
Do you have a
It's not there
question?
yet.
Do you have a question for our next person?
Yeah, so I think you probably will guess that this is something that I'm thinking about